Sometimes heroes come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the line between good and evil isn't as clear as we'd like it to be. This is the story of a man who started as a kidnapper and became an unlikely savior. It all began in a small town surrounded by endless forests and winding roads. It wasn't the kind of place where crime was common. In fact, most people never locked their doors at night. It was safe, peaceful, and predictable. For Sandra and her son Jamie, that small-town life was both a blessing and a burden. Sandra was a single mother who worked tirelessly at the local diner. She was the kind of woman who never complained, even when life felt unfair. Jamie, her 10-year-old son, was the light of her life. Curious, bright, and full of questions. Sandra didn't have much, but she had Jamie, and that was all she needed. The night it happened started like any other. It was a chilly autumn evening, and Sandra had just finished a double shift at the diner. Her feet ached, and her uniform smelled faintly of coffee and grease, but she didn't care. She was looking forward to picking up Jamie from his friend's house and heading home to relax. The drive was quiet, the roads lined with tall, shadowy trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the dark sky. Jamie sat in the back seat, chattering about the new game he and his friend had played. Sandra smiled, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "You're lucky you get to have all this fun," she teased gently. "When I was your age, my idea of excitement was catching fireflies in the backyard." Jamie laughed. "You're old, Mom. Things are cooler now." Sandra chuckled, shaking her head. For a moment, everything felt right in the world. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a dark figure appeared in the middle of the road. Sandra slammed on the brakes, her heart leaping into her throat as the car screeched to a halt. Before she could even process what was happening, the driver's side door was yanked open. A man wearing a ski mask and smelling faintly of gasoline grabbed her arm and dragged her out of the car. "Don't scream," he hissed. Jamie's terrified voice broke through the chaos. "Mom! Mom!" Another man appeared, pulling Jamie out of the back seat. Sandra struggled, her instincts screaming to protect her son, but the masked man's grip was ironclad. They were shoved into the back of a van, their hands tied with rough ropes and blindfolds covering their eyes. The doors slammed shut, and the van roared to life. Sandra could feel Jamie trembling beside her. She inched closer, her voice shaking but steady. "It's gonna be okay, sweetheart. Just stay close to me." But deep down, she wasn't sure if she believed her own words. The van sped down the road, the hum of the engine punctuated by the occasional bump and sharp turn. Sandra tried to keep track of where they were going, but the blindfold and disorienting movements made it impossible. Her ears picked up on fragments of conversation between the two men in the front. "You think this is worth it?" one of them muttered. "Just stick to the plan," the other snapped. Sandra's mind raced. What plan? Why had they been taken? And more importantly, what would happen to Jamie? Beside her, Jamie whispered, "Mom, I'm scared." Sandra's heart broke. "I know, baby, I am too. But we're gonna get through this, okay? Just stay calm." As the hours passed, Sandra began to notice something unusual about one of the kidnappers, the one who had called himself Marcus. His voice wasn't as harsh as the other man's, and there was a hesitation in his tone. He wasn't yelling or threatening them. In fact, Sandra heard him muttering under his breath. "This isn't what I signed up for," he said softly. "This isn't right." Sandra's motherly instincts kicked in. Marcus wasn't like the other man. There was something conflicted about him, something human. Then came the phone call. Marcus answered in a low voice, but Sandra could still hear the person on the other end. "Just do it. No loose ends," the voice barked. There was a long pause before Marcus replied. I need time to think." That pause, that hesitation, became the turning point of this story. The van veered sharply, the gravel crunching loudly beneath the tires. Sandra could tell they were no longer on the main road. The bumps grew rougher, the ride more uneven. Finally, the van came to a stop. Sandra held her breath as the back doors swung open. Marcus stood there, his face still hidden by the mask. For a moment, she braced herself for the worst. Instead, Marcus leaned in and whispered, "I can't let this happen. I'm going to help you escape, but you have to run. Now." Sandra hesitated, unsure if this was a trap. But when Marcus cut the ropes binding their hands and removed their blindfolds, she saw the urgency in his eyes. "Go," he urged. Grabbing Jamie's hand, Sandra bolted. They ran through the woods, their breaths ragged and hearts pounding. The trees seemed endless, but Sandra pushed forward, driven by the primal need to protect her son. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled upon a ranger station. Sandra collapsed in relief as Jamie clung to her, tears streaming down both their faces. They were safe. The authorities arrived quickly, launching an investigation that uncovered a tangled web of criminal activity. Marcus had been part of a gang involved in kidnappings, but his reasons weren't what anyone expected. Desperate to pay for his younger sister's medical bills, Marcus had joined the group. But when he realized the gang planned to harm Sandra and Jamie, something inside him snapped. He couldn't go through with it. Marcus turned himself in, providing crucial evidence that led to the gang's capture. Sandra never saw Marcus again, but she couldn't forget him. As Sandra sat in her living room months later, watching Jamie play with his toys, she thought about that night. She thought about Marcus. He had started as a kidnapper, someone who took away her sense of safety, but in the end he had given her something far greater. A second chance. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or capes. Sometimes they're flawed, broken people who find the strength to do what's right when it matters most. What would you do if faced with an impossible choice? Would you have the courage to risk everything to save someone else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because the world is full of stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. Stories like these remind us that life isn't always black and white. Marcus was far from perfect. He made terrible choices that put innocent lives in danger. But when faced with a moment of truth, he chose to do the right thing, even at great personal cost. This story isn't about excusing wrongdoing. It's about redemption. It's about how, in the darkest moments, even those who seem lost can find the strength to change course and make a difference. It's a reminder that people are complex, layered, and sometimes capable of surprising acts of bravery and humanity. As we reflect on Marcus's actions, it's worth asking ourselves, what would we have done in his position? Would we have risked everything to save two strangers? Would we have found the courage to defy a situation that felt impossible to escape? Sandra and Jamie's story also highlights the resilience of the human spirit. Despite their fear, they stayed strong for each other. Sandra's unwavering love for her son carried them through, and Jamie's innocence served as a beacon of hope in a terrifying situation. These stories are more than just tales. They are mirrors reflecting the best and worst of humanity. They remind us to cherish the people we love, to stay strong in the face of adversity, and to always hold on to hope, no matter how dire the circumstances may seem. But we don't just want to tell stories, we want to create a dialogue. This is where you come in. What are your thoughts on this story? Did Marcus redeem himself in your eyes, or do his actions in the end not outweigh his initial crime? We also want to know, what kind of stories do you want to hear next? Are you drawn to tales of redemption like this one? Or do you prefer thrilling crime stories, heartwarming acts of kindness, or inspiring tales of triumph over adversity? Let us know in the comments below. Your input shapes the stories we tell and the messages we share. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who could use a reminder of the power of redemption, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible narratives that capture the beauty and complexity of the human experience. Together, let's continue to explore the stories that connect us all.